Hi everyone, I'm Emma, a certified dog trainer,
And I'm Kirsten, a certified dog behavior consultant.
and this is Dog Chats. Join us as we chat about dog behavior, having fun with your dogs, and building relationships. We will offer practical advice and a bit of humor.
Welcome to episode 27. Today we have Kim Brophey, our special guest, applied ethologist, author of Meet Your Dog, founder of Family Dog Mediation, and one of my favorite people in the world and mentors.
You've heard us talk about our guests many times throughout our episodes. We both share the same philosophy of working to shift the paradigm from fixing dogs to nurturing their well-being. So we welcome Kim to this episode.
Oh, how exciting. Thank you guys for having me.
So, Kim, we usually ask people to start by sharing their own journey, how you got into training and then moved to Family Dog Mediation, and then if you want to share anything about your current family dogs.
Sure. Yeah. So, my journey into the world of dog behavior and training was an interesting one because my first exposure to dog training in the 80s and 90s was largely stuff that I was kind of repelled by. Like, I didn't like the models, and I was like, oh, I don't want to train dogs. That's icky. That's weird. Like, I don't like how people are treating them and stuff. But I was so intrigued by the potential for the relationship. I was like a kid who grew up on the Lassie episodes. And so I was like, I want to figure out how to have that kind of relationship with a dog. So I was obsessed with my family dogs growing up and like trying to figure out how to communicate with them, but not so much in kind of the traditional idea of dog training. And then when I went to college, I found out that they had this great program there called integrated studies where you can essentially kind of customize a major for a discipline that doesn't really have a major either at that college or in general. And I was able to get my bachelor's in the applied relationship between human and animal behavior at a time, especially when there was no undergraduate education in anything like that in the United States. And so that was how I got into it. And I went into it thinking that I was going to work just with service and therapy animals. Because at that time, there was all this really great information coming out, and it was kind of the birth, if you will, of like the positive reinforcement movement and how you could shake without some of the yuckier stuff and create these cool relationships. And I thought, what a great win-win, right? A service dog gets to like be with their person all day long. And if it's done really well and it's the right dog and the right person, this is just going to be fabulous. And then right when I graduated, the world of behavior consulting was kind of being born. The IABC was just being established. And that was because people were really starting to struggle with their dogs right around there in tandem with our increased levels of captivity as a culture, that we were keeping dogs more confined than they had been like in my childhood. And so I got really intrigued with the whole idea of trying to help people navigate those relationships, right? And so family dog mediation and that whole kind of model was born out of this applied ethology approach to behavior in the first place, and the animal welfare lens on all of that, and the kind of historical and evolutionary components to what we experience as our dog's behavior now. And then when I got out in the field, I did end up doing service and therapy dog training, but I became just obsessed with the dysfunction and then the resolution potentials for relationships between people and their dogs. So, and then right now, my own camp of dogs is just two. We had a really rough year last year. We lost three. It was a heartbreaking year, but we have a quiet pair of females right now, a Great Pyrenees who's one, and then a 10-year-old toy poodle mix who, is disguised as a Papillon because she looks like a Papillon. She really does see a toy poodle.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And can you explain the difference between family dog mediation and dog training?
Yeah, so it's a good question, right? So like, and frankly, it was one that it took me a while to figure out how to answer. So family dog mediation for me, when I was doing it as a trainer, was the spirit of using this applied ethology lens in the process of helping people with their pet dog's behavior. And the applied ethology lens is basically taking the field of ethology, which is, animals' behavior in nature, in their natural environment from an evolutionary or biological perspective, right? And then applied ethology is what happens when we complicate that through captivity and when animals are living under our control in some way. And so the understandings, or I should say the misunderstandings that are so common in our culture about what is going on with our dog's behavior, why they're doing what we're doing, how we're supposed to fix it, many of those things become really clear very quickly through the lens of applied ethology, as far as us understanding why they're doing it in the first place and how we can kind of get to the heart of that problem, as opposed to tinkering around with the symptoms of the problem, which is what kind of traditional dog training sends us in the direction of, is just playing around with the surface. And at this point, now that we have thousands of family dog mediators all over the world, many of whom aren't trainers, many of whom are veterinarians, or they work in shelters, or they're groomers, or they're boarders, or daycare operators, or things like that, we've really come to understand that the best way to describe family dog mediation, since it's not always even related to dog training, is it's the integration of applied ethology into any dog pro's respective work. So your vet, for instance, could understand legs and applied ethology as a family dog mediator and be integrating that into the treatment and care of your family animal in that kind of medical environment as well.
Yeah, excellent. Can you just give us an example? I'm going to throw out a breed group. And what would be an example of a symptom of behavior as opposed to how to kind of use the applied ethology? So let's take the herding group. There's a
Yeah.
herding dog living in an apartment with two kids and a cat.
Mhm.
And the people
Mhm.
come to us with the complaint the dog is chasing the kids and the cat.
And so from just a dog training perspective, right? Like the it's all how you raise them bit, we get right to, okay, so we have to reward the behavior we want and punish the behavior we don't want, and we have to train this dog to obey our commands so that they won't chase the child.
Right.
Okay.
Go to place. Sorry.
Right, exactly. Go to place, stay out, come, like, so then we're in the position of micromanaging this dog. And the irony is that the dog is micromanaging the children, right? And so then everyone's just micromanaging each other. So this is why ethology is so helpful. So ethology gives us the context for where that behavior is rooted, right? As opposed to the little branches we're seeing.
Yeah.
So we can look at that behavior and understand this is a type of dog that was bred for literally generations, right? Hundreds of years, thousands of years, depending on the particular breed. And they have been developed to control other living beings,
Huh?
to control and stop movement of other living beings, or to create movement, right? Depending on like what particularly the shepherd was trying to get the dog to do to help move livestock or keep livestock in a given area. And so for us to have this expectation that, well, we want a border collie, but we don't want all of the behavior that we humans historically painstakingly bred into them for all of these years. We want it to do this, 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 and not this and this and this. But then it literally violates all of natural law. And that's the part where we just have this cognitive dissonance in our culture. Like, well, you should just make a dog do that. And if they were a good dog and an obedient dog and you trained them right, that would work. But really, because that stuff is rooted in the selective pressure, so not nature's natural selection, but our human artificial selection for those traits that were useful for us, we can't just expect that we can put a cork in that behavior and have it go away without having serious problems. And what sheds the light so well on that is the field of applied ethology and animal welfare science. So if we shift for a second, we don't think about our dogs and we're thinking about an animal living in a zoo, for instance. Part of the responsibility of zookeepers or zoologists is to come up with the habitat designs that afford that particular species the opportunity to express the behaviors that they were selected for in nature. And that is equivalent to their welfare, right? So if they don't have enough opportunities, they will have poor welfare. If they have sufficient opportunities to have a rich diversity of behavior, then they have better welfare, right? And so what's happening a lot of the times for our dogs, we don't really talk about it, is they're really having welfare issues because the environment doesn't afford them the opportunity to express those natural behaviors in healthy ways. Therefore, it shows up on the toddlers or the cats or the neighbors when they come in and we're having a little dinner party. And there's that wonderful Larson, cartoon that was written years ago where the border collie has all the guests like nicely organized in the corner of the family room, and that's pretty much what it's going to look like if we don't provide some appropriate outlet. It doesn't have to be sheep in our backyard, but some kind of appropriate place for that behavior to go.
Well, I love that. I love that. So, in thinking about the same breed we're talking about, what would one of the things, if you went into that home, what are one of the things that you would say to meet the dog's needs?
Right. So what you'd want to think about, and it depends on the dogs. This is why I like legs, right? So it's like sometimes people will say, well, you can't just focus on genetics because they're not predictive. And it's like, exactly. That's why legs. So legs, learning, environment, genetics, and individual self contextualizes that G, that genetics. So we've got that border collie who could be anything from a lemon of a border collie to like a working line super border collie, right? We don't know. But so if I go in and I determine, okay, we've got like super working line border collie living in a condo, well, we have a lot to talk about. First of all, this is a dog that could work, 8 to 10 hours a day. So being able to provide appropriate physical and mental stimulation outside of that condo is going to be really important. Finding some kind of substitute, whether that be tri-ball, where that's a game where dogs are herding large balls. You could do other kinds of things where the dog has opportunities to control others appropriately. Sometimes you might find some dogs that are like friends that they could meet up somewhere and those dogs will be game for, yes, you can, chase me and bark at me and control what I'm doing. That's fine. I think it's perfectly amusing. Really kind of targeted activities where we're working closely with the person and the dog, because that's a trait of being a herding dog, is that selection for attentiveness to the person and following directions, especially in a high stimulation, high excitement, high stakes kind of, scenario. So agility or other dog sports, barn hunt, nose work, things like that, where we're really dialing into that connection and giving these like really fine-tuned instructions that the dog can get good at, that can really hit the nail on the head as well. And then in the house, you want to have some management and stuff in place so that the dog isn't rehearsing that behavior towards the wrong targets, like the kids and the cats and whatnot. And then we're kind of thinking of it like we're funneling the behavior in a healthy direction and providing good outlets where that can go. And then damming that riverbed, if you will, in the wrong context or the place where we don't want that behavior to go.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I mean, and we started with the paradigm shift of not fixing the dog,
Yes.
but meeting their needs and meeting them.
Yes.
And that's exactly what you
Yeah. And it's
described.
so important. And looking at the individual dog.
Yeah. And I really do hope that the industry is starting to move in that direction. I keep hearing that. Like, I know that there was just a conference a few days ago in Kent in the UK, Animal Behavior Kent, Daniel Shaw's company there hosted another wonderful conference, and they're having another one this summer that I'll be going to, and hearing about how all of the speakers were talking about this in their own ways from the attendees is so inspiring. Because just like 3 or 4 years ago, we were out on a limb. We were like left field introducing this concept, and now it's like permeated the mainstream conversation, not just because of us, but because it's kind of like this collective unconscious permeating like our, perception of dogs, and it's happening on an international level. It's just like percolating there and it's beautiful. Like
Yeah.
everyone's talking about care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a task. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
But I have to credit you because I feel like you weren't afraid to speak up. I think a lot of people had these ideas and were kind of keeping them to themselves, and then
Yeah.
you were like, let's speak the truth.
Yeah, well, it was terrifying. I won't argue that. I mean, because the first few times, well, many times, not even first few, for years when I would put these ideas out there, it was like crickets, and people would look at me like I had three heads or just talk over me. And, because the mainstream idea as kind of behaviorism was crowned in our industry, like the one and only end all be all. Not that it doesn't have its place, right? As we know, like we're using behaviorism concepts, learning theory, applied behavior analysis all the time in our work, but it's not everything.
Yeah.
And so it was threatening. And I think, frankly, it still is for some people in the industry where it's like, but this is what I know. This is my craft. This is my lane that I'm supposed to stay in, how to change behavior.
Yeah.
And then what we kind of introduced terrifyingly was, but should we be?
Yeah.
And how, and then what else could we do to solve the problems where we don't even end up needing to use those kinds of training methods. Maybe we could meet the needs and then the behaviors go away. And then I was having that experience with my clients all the time, so it got harder to keep my mouth shut. I went on. But I felt so grateful that it was well received, that there was some timing thing there that made people, I think, ready to hear it.
And I think such an important time, because Emma and I were talking about social media and how, you could be a pet owner and just start looking at TikTok and go down crazy paths and you don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot out there. And I love what you're doing right now with a good life. And I'd love if you just talk about that a little bit and just putting out positive content instead
Oh,
of.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I love Good Life. Like we're working on getting our new booth kit kind of elements printed and stuff for this event we'll be doing in Vegas at the HSUS conference in the spring. And, I was looking at that Good Life kind of like front marketing message that we've landed on. It's taken us a while to figure out kind of what we want to lead with that. And the reason that I love it is it feels so accessible. Like we all want a good life. We want our dogs to have a good life. Like who doesn't, right? We want to share a good life with our dogs.
Yeah.
But interestingly, that is actually the term that leading animal welfare scientists have landed on as the goal for the welfare standard for animals living in captivity. So it's kind of been part of the movement from the 5 freedoms to the 5 domains, and the evolution of our understanding about mental wellness, the internal experience of the animal, that mental state, and what fosters that positive mental state.
Yeah.
And so there's a life not worth living. There's a life worth living, which is the balance point, if you will, where it's like, I mean, it's worth living, right? But none of us really want that for ourselves and our dogs, right? We'd like to have it be in the positive direction. And then there's the good life where you actually have that fulfillment. You have that like integrity of form and function, integrity of experience, where that animal feels like at home in their body, at home in their world. Things make sense to them. They have agency, they have freedom, they have relationships, secure attachment, like whatever it is that's particular for that species that they need to be completely healthy from a welfare perspective. And what we're really trying to do is bridge that science of animal welfare, which is currently mostly discussed only with animals in zoos and farms,
Yeah.
and have it fully applied for the benefit of pet dogs.
Oh, I love that. I didn't know that. That makes me so much even more excited about the new social media.
Yeah.
Producing.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
One of the questions is probably more a trainer question than for our clients, but that shift of when they call us and they want dog training and it's not that's exactly what they want. They just think that's what they are supposed to do,
Yeah.
right? If that makes
Yeah. And that's a huge like shift in cultural narrative, right? Because it's been so well marketed for so long to the general public that you take any dog and you get them some dog training, and then they do what you say. It's great. I can just sign up for a dog training class, and then my dog will be a minion as dogs are supposed to be.
Yeah.
And we frankly have a lot of misinformation that has been spread on such a high level, so that it permeates kind of all corners of the pet industry, veterinarians, pet stores, markets, trainers, groomers. It's just this idea that it's like all how you raise them, which was really well intentioned, but that it puts all this burden on the person, like, well, you better raise them right, which means you better train them right.
Mhm.
And it means that the dog in themselves doesn't have any kind of integrity of being that needs to be met for who they are, right? It's like you just mold them like these blank slates, that you just write what you'd like on them. These are the things I want them to do. These are the things I don't want them to do. And it flies in the face of everything that we understand about nature and science. And yet it's still something that we've kind of absorbed into our psyche. So we're kind of chipping away at some of those assumptions and those expectations that have been built. I've found in my work with clients is that most people, when you explain it to them, they get it. They can look at the world filled with all these other species and understand how they live in different ecological niches. And they're meant to kind of fit that like a key to a lock. And even the concept of captivity and just the swallowing of that truth that our dogs are actually captive, right? And nobody actually says that out loud. It sounds terrible,
Yeah.
but it's true, right? And so then we have the same responsibility as, say, a zookeeper would, right? It's our job to create the habitat that is going to be rich for them, which is a whole lifestyle equation when they're living in our family with us, right? And then to be able to meet those needs. And yeah, it's going to take some time, but frankly, I'm surprised how quickly the progress has been made just in 3 years, like we were talking about. I'm encouraged.
Yeah. When I first read your book, Meet Your Dog, it's funny. I was thinking about this the other day, and it just made the top 8
And
best.
for US World News and Report or whatever that is. Yeah, that was exciting.
Very exciting. I listened to audiobooks and I was driving back roads and I was like freaking out, so excited. And Em and I were working at a dog school at the time. And I would get there and just, I couldn't shut up about it. It was like this woman, Kim Brophey, like she's saying what we're saying, and then giving that framework, giving the legs framework was so great. Because that helped me explain to clients, even if I'm not walking in, like, let's talk about your dog's legs. It gave us that direction.
And I'm going to have you just say what legs means again, because people are going to think
Oh,
we're
yeah.
talking about their legs.
Learning,
Yes.
environment, the genes, and the self.
Yeah.
So that book literally changed my life because I felt like we were living in our own little bubble here on the West Coast. And you just ignited a fire of all of these little matches. I think we're sitting around like we have these ideas, but we're afraid to say anything. And you brought these people together and look what you've done.
Well, you're one of so many people who've said that, and it's been such a cool experience because I didn't introduce anything totally new, right? Like all the science was already there. It was all out there. I kind of threaded it together and created like a connect the dots picture that we could all step back and look at and be like, oh, together. But like so many of us were having these experiences and we're coming to these conclusions or these ideas or having these intuitive little feelings like on our own, but then it was so hard to kind of pierce through and like talk about it and contextualize it. And I think that's what applied ethology really does. It's one of the reasons I love it so much. It's an interdisciplinary field. And so it's bringing in all of these pieces of the puzzle that often don't get included in the conversation because they're all relevant to captive animals. And then legs just makes it like even more distilled and easier to talk about. If we do want to be able to kind of map it for a client, we can draw LEGS on a piece of paper and be like, this is what's going on with the learning. This is what's going on with the environment. This is what's going on with the genetics. This is what's going on with the self. And then if they're like, but I want you to dog train at it, I can be like, do you see that the problem is here in the E and the G part, not in the L part? Yeah. So, we've got to focus on how to get that EG relationship working. And they're like, oh, like it visually starts to make sense when we need to boil it down that way.
Yeah, I love that.
So what's one thing every dog guardian can start today to improve their relationship with their dogs?
Yeah, so short of buying the book and reading all of the pieces of the puzzle or going and watching The Dog's Truth, which is now on YouTube for free. So that's fun. That's a great way to dip your toe in the water of all of the stuff we're talking about. You can just go to YouTube and put in The Dog's Truth or go to the link in the show notes. But even just looking at, like, you could literally Google your dog's breed. So let's say you know what your dog's breed is. If you don't, by the way, I highly suggest a DNA test. You can use our dog key app as well as a way of kind of determining what your dog has going on under the hood. But thinking that that's kind of like what they come to the earth with, right? That's like thing one in the context of all the other legs. Looking at that natural history. So let's say you do have a purebred dog. You can Google the history of that breed and read through what that dog was developed for, where, what they were used for. And now imagine that in your living room and see if anything starts to immediately click, because so often it does. They're like, yeah, right. Micromanaging sheep, micromanaging children. I can see how that happens, And so, like, just as a way to appreciate that in nature, all of those things that an animal is born with are meant to make life more easy to navigate and make it more easy for them to be successful and survive. So they're they're wired with these predilections, not so that they're like automatrons just behaving according to the instructions of their DNA, but it helps to prime them to perceive things and behave in certain ways that would be instrumental towards their survival. Humans got in there, we tweaked it, did our own thing with it. So it wasn't necessarily what was good for them, but they experience it like, this is like who I am in the world.
Yeah.
And we can't just erase that. We have to honor it, meet them. That's why the book is called Meet Your Dog, like meet them where they are, right? And then figure out how to kind of curate a shared reality together that works for both of you, where you're making some compromises, they're making some compromises, but everyone's needs get met.
Love it. Love it. So everybody today should Google. And, if you don't know, you could get a DNA test.
Yeah,
And then you can always reach out to a family dog mediator.
absolutely. Yeah. Get some help, guidance, in that whole process. I think that there's now with thousands of them around the world, it's a lot easier to find someone, or you can work with someone remotely as well. Most of them do offer some remote services that can help make things make a lot more sense when you're confused about what the heck is going on.
I love it. Well, thank you for making a difference in so many dogs' lives.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for doing the same and for being part of this amazing movement and moment in this industry.
I can't wait to see what's coming, where we've come so far. And thank you for taking the morning to be with us and share
Thanks
all of
so
your
much.
wisdom with our dog guardians.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys.
Thanks for tuning in today and hope you'll join us for our next episode. You can reach Emma at
ecdogtraining.com or on Instagram at ecdog_training, and Kirsten at
kwhappydogs.com or on Facebook at kwhappydogs. Don't forget to hit subscribe. See you next time.